It's 1982. The world of professional wrestling is still shrouded in mystery. Kayfabe is law. The lines between reality and illusion blur like a cheap VHS tape. And in the middle of it all, one man dares to face the skeptics head on.
Yeah, Simon. And that man is Randy Savage, future Hall of Famer, Slim Jim enthusiast, and apparently the original customer service rep for pro wrestling complaints.
Savage, still years away from becoming the macho man we all know, sits down in a tiny studio and takes live calls from fans and critics alike. Their question? The same one wrestling has faced for decades. Is it fake?
And their answer? A verbal piledriver courtesy of Randy Poffo himself. This guy didn't just defend wrestling, he cut a promo on every doubter with the intensity of a guy trying to return a broken toaster at Sears.
It was raw. It was unfiltered. It was a glimpse into a world where wrestling's greatest protectors would go to war for the business, one phone call at a time.
So grab your landline, put on your most serious 80s mustache and get ready, because when Savage answers the phone, you better have the right question.
This is Randy Savage versus the non-believers.
And trust me, they didn't stand
Take a look.
chance.
How do you tell one like me, and I'm going to be truthful with you, I do not believe in it, that's what's on television. To me, it's nothing but a show, sort of a fake on television, and that's...
What bothers you about professional wrestling? First of all, 100% real, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, let's get this call here. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, how much of wrestling is fake?
How much is... Well, that's a good question. I want to know this one myself.
0.
None at all?
Nothing.
Now, you mean to tell me that these that's on the television, the tube, now, as I said, I'm not talking about live, I'm talking about on the tube, that none of that is fake whatsoever?
Let me requalify my answer to the public and to you. I can't vouch for every match. Anytime two individuals go into the ring, you don't know what's going on. You got two guys bowling for the finals. And if one guy, somehow, I don't know how, decides that he wants to throw the bowling game and make less money than the other guy and have him beat him, and have that guy go on to fame and fortune, well, that was a pretty good con job that guy did on the other guy. Okay, that can happen. You know, I'm not vouching for every match, but I'm saying professional wrestling, super athletes, training all the time for money at the top. The money is better the higher up the card you go. There's very little reason in my mind why I would go on television and do anything to make me look ridiculous. Now, or in the studio of the ICW Wrestling Studios at WTVQ and Channel 36 in Lexington, there's no reason for me to do that. I can't think of one. If you can give me one now. Yeah.
You got another question?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, I know you're, well, let's see if we got another call here. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'd like to know what Macho Man does with all of his bruises.
What does he do with all of his bruises?
I mean, wrestling is such an athletic sport. I'd like to know where all the bruises go.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, just hang on there, and let's just say, for example, that I've seen them, you know, where somebody is laying down on the mat, and then all of a sudden you'll see an arm where you jump up and maybe hit an arm right down on his chest or throat or something. Now this got to make a bruise.
Yes, it does.
And it's got to hurt.
It sure does. Makes a bruise and it hurts. Yes,
now what happens to all these bruises?
You wear them. You wear them. There's nothing you can do. You can take vitamin C to help get rid of them. If that's what you mean. The bruises that maybe she gets from tying herself up to different furniture in the room in which she sleeps can be cured with vitamin C. Those are not the same kind of bruises. Those are whip marks. We don't get whip marks. What we do is guaranteed personified If I touch you and squeeze you real hard, you will bruise and redden right away. But if you do it to me, my skin is tight. You know, tight, lady? My skin is real tight, and it's not gonna bruise like this woman on the phone or like yourself, because I'm in shape. And you're right, I am a great athlete. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Macho. I tell you, I get stocked up on my vitamin C, and you can bruise me any day.
You don't need no vitamin E, lady. I know that. I know you don't need no vitamin E.
Well, that's a good one. Well, one thing, you can settle down. She didn't leave her name anyway.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Legends, Lies, and Lockups, where we dissect the careers of the biggest names in professional wrestling. I'm Simon, your voice of reason, and as always, I'm joined by the Crown Princess of Nonsense, Jill.
Oh, that's rich. If I'm the Crown Princess, then you must be the court jester. But forget all that, Simon. Today is all about one man, one legend, one lunatic genius, Randy Savage.
That's right, the Macho Man himself. A larger-than-life character, a two-time WWF champion, a WCW world champion, and one of the most charismatic performers in wrestling history.
And don't forget the most stylish man to ever elbow drop his way into our hearts.
Let's start with his in-ring work. Randy Savage was one of the most technically gifted wrestlers of his generation.
Oh, no question. The guy was smoother than a fresh jar of peanut butter. Every move had purpose. Every match felt like a blockbuster movie where he was the hero, the villain, and the special effects budget all in one.
And one of the greatest matches of all time, his classic against Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3, a masterpiece of storytelling, pacing, and in-ring precision.
Steamboat versus Savage, basically wrestling's Mona Lisa. But do you know what I love most about that match? Savage planned every single second of it. The guy didn't believe in calling things in the ring. He was like a wrestling scientist, but instead of formulas, he had body slams and top rope double axe handles.
That level of detail is what made him great. He didn't just wrestle, he crafted performances. And his finisher, that top rope elbow drop, was poetry in motion.
Oh, and it looked like it hurt. Unlike some elbow drops where it's basically a guy falling on you like a lazy cat, Savage put his whole soul into that thing. He didn't just land on you, he crashed into you.
And that intensity carried over into his promos. Few could cut a promo like Randy Savage. He had this unpredictable energy, this controlled chaos. Every time he spoke, you had no idea what was going to come out, but you had to listen.
The cream rises to the top. Oh man, that promo alone deserves its own wing in the Hall of Fame. Nobody could make a coffee creamer sound like a world-ending prophecy quite like Macho Man.
And let's not forget the iconic rivalry with Hulk Hogan. The Mega Powers explode, one of the greatest stories ever told in wrestling.
Ah yes, the great soap opera of the 80s. Two best friends, one woman, and one very big misunderstanding. I mean, sure, Hogan was a backstabber in a bandana, but you can't deny the drama was incredible.
Speaking of which, we have to talk about Miss Elizabeth. She was the heart of Savage's character, the perfect contrast to his fiery personality.
Oh, she was the first lady of wrestling, no doubt. But let's be real. Savage was, how do I put this nicely, a little overprotective.
That's one way to put it. Some would say jealous.
Some would say possessive.
Randy Savage. From his early days in the territories to his crowning moment at WrestleMania 4, it was a journey paved with intensity, athleticism, and of course, a little madness.
A little madness. Simon, this guy made the Joker look like a well-adjusted book club member. He was flamboyant, dangerous, and his outfits looked like a box of crayons through a rave. And let's not forget the real MVP of this story, the lovely Miss Elizabeth.
There's no denying Elizabeth played a crucial role in Savage's career, but let's start at the beginning. Randy Poffo.
Whoa there, cowboy. You're breaking kayfabe already. Next thing, you'll be telling me the Undertaker isn't an actual undead mortician.
Savage, happy, began his wrestling career in the early 70s. Unlike most wrestlers of his era, he was a multi-sport athlete. His first dream? Baseball. He played minor league ball for the St. Louis Cardinals organization.
And then he realised that throwing a curveball is nowhere near as fun as dropping an elbow off the top rope. Smart man.
By the mid-70s, Savage fully transitioned into wrestling. His father, Angelo Poffo, was a respected wrestler, and Randy, alongside his brother Lanny, competed in the territories. He made waves in the ICW and later in Memphis, where he had a legendary feud with Jerry the King Lawler.
Savage versus Lawler was like watching a car chase in a Michael Bay movie. Explosive, unpredictable, and someone was always getting hit with something they shouldn't be.
His Memphis days established him as one of the most intense and skilled wrestlers in the business. That caught the attention of the WWF, and in 1985, Savage debuted in the company.
And in true Macho Man fashion, he didn't just walk in like some jobber. No. Every manager in the company wanted a piece of him. Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, even classy Freddie Blassie.
But in one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history, Savage shocked the world by choosing a previously unknown manager, Miss Elizabeth. A stark contrast to the loud, brash managers of the era, Elizabeth was graceful and elegant.
And completely unprepared for the madhouse that was Randy Savage's career. That poor woman had to put up with his paranoia, his jealousy, and the fact that he probably spent more time in front of a mirror than she did.
The Macho Man quickly ascended the ranks, and by early 1986, he was in the hunt for gold. Enter the Intercontinental Championship.
A title held by such legends as Pat Patterson, Don Muraco, and Tito Santana.
Savage defeated Santana in February 1986, officially marking the beginning of his legendary title reign. For over a year, he elevated the championship, having classics with Ricky Steamboat, George the Animal Steele, and Bruno Sammartino.
And don't forget that George Steele spent half of his time trying to steal Elizabeth from him. That whole feud was like a bad romantic comedy with chair shots.
Then came WrestleMania 3, perhaps the greatest match in WWE history, Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Oh, absolutely. If you haven't seen it, stop what you're doing and watch it now. Unless you're driving, then pull over first. That match was a masterpiece, with 20+ near falls, crisp wrestling, and storytelling at its finest.
Unfortunately for Savage, Steamboat got the better of him and took the title. But this loss set him on a bigger trajectory, the World Heavyweight Championship scene.
And that brings us to 1988, where the WWF Championship was a total mess. Hogan had dropped the belt under controversial circumstances when Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, literally tried to buy the title from Andre the Giant.
Which led to the championship being vacated and set the stage for a 14-man tournament at WrestleMania 4.
Savage entered the tournament with one thing in mind: victory. But he wasn't alone. Elizabeth, in her brilliance, brought out the one man who could balance the odds, Hulk Hogan.
Savage's journey at WrestleMania 4 was nothing short of grueling. He had to wrestle 4 matches in one night. First, he took out Butch Reed, then Greg the Hammer Valentine, and after that, he survived a war with one-man gang.
And waiting for him in the finals, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. With Andre lurking at ringside, Savage looked doomed, until Hogan evened the playing field.
And with a flying elbow drop heard around the world, Randy Savage became the undisputed WWF champion. A moment of triumph, a moment of destiny, a moment of
absolute insanity. The world officially belonged to Macho Madness.
And that is how Randy Savage climbed to the top of the mountain. But as we know, when you reach the peak, there's always a storm waiting. The Mega Powers formed in 1987 when 2 of the biggest superstars in WWF history joined forces, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the reigning WWF champion at the time. It was the ultimate alliance.
Oh, you mean the day the best man won, right? Finally, the world saw what I've been saying for years. Hulk Hogan is a glory-hogging, backstabbing, bleached blonde politician.
Oh, give me a break. Savage was consumed by jealousy and paranoia.
Ultimate for Hogan, maybe. Savage carried that team. He was the skill, the strategy, the fashion sense.
Fashion sense?
Hey, a guy who can pull off neon yellow cowboy hats is a guy who can do anything.
Look, for nearly a year, Hogan and Savage were the most dominant duo in the business. They even survived the Twin Towers, Akeem and the Big Boss Man, at Survivor Series 88. But then, cracks started to show. And you know why? Because Randy Savage couldn't handle sharing the spotlight.
Wrong. Savage started noticing what I'd been noticing all along. Hogan had eyes for Elizabeth. The way he'd lift her on his shoulder like she was a trophy. The way he'd accidentally touch her arm. This wasn't a tag team. This was a homewrecker in a bandana.
That is a gross exaggeration. Hogan and Elizabeth were friends. But Savage's paranoia kept growing, and it all came to a head on February 3rd, 1989, on the main event.
Yeah, real convenient, Simon. Hogan accidentally sends Savage crashing into Elizabeth, and suddenly, who's the one carrying her to the back? Hogan! Not the guy she actually manages. Not the man she's in a relationship with.
Somebody had to help her.
Oh, please. Savage saw it for what it was. His so-called brother using Elizabeth to steal the spotlight and his title. And you know what? He was right. Because as soon as the Macho Man confronted him, Hogan played the victim.
Savage attacked Hogan in the medical room. He blindsided him with the WWF title and turned his back on everything they built together. That's not the move of a misunderstood champion. That's the move of a selfish, jealous man who couldn't handle being second best.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Second best. Savage was the WWF champion. Hogan was just his sidekick. The only reason Hogan was even in the picture was because Savage allowed him to be.
And at WrestleMania 5, Hogan took back what was rightfully his. He overcame all of Savage's tactics, all of his arrogance, and proved once again who the real leader of the Mega Powers was.
Oh yeah, because a boot to the face and a leg drop is so honourable. Hogan gets all this praise, but nobody talks about the fact that Savage had him beat until Elizabeth interfered.
Elizabeth did not interfere. She was trying to keep the peace.
Then why was she out there, huh? Answer me that, Professor. If she wasn't there for Hogan, why didn't she just walk out with her man? Because deep down, she knew Savage was better off without her. And that's when we saw the true rise of macho madness. The Macho King.
Oh boy, here we go.
That's right, here we go. Because after that so-called betrayal, Savage finally rid himself of all the dead weight and aligned with someone who truly respected him. Sensational Sherry. No more babysitting Elizabeth, no more Hogan leeching off his spotlight. Savage entered the King of the Ring tournament in '89, dominated the competition, and officially became the Macho King. A regal manoeuvre, Simon. Kings don't follow the same rules as commoners. That's why Sherry was the perfect partner. She wasn't some delicate flower. She was ruthless, just like Savage needed to be.
And so began one of the most notorious eras in Savage's career. He became more vicious, more arrogant, and more dangerous than ever before. He targeted Dusty Rhodes, the Ultimate Warrior, and, of course, Hulk Hogan. Again.
Oh, and let me guess. You're going to say Hogan was the good guy in all of this? The guy who couldn't handle losing his best friend, so he ran back to Elizabeth? The guy who always had to be at the top, no matter what? Spare me. Savage was on another level as the Macho King. He reinvented himself, he ruled with an iron fist, and he gave us the most entertaining promos this business has ever seen.
I won't argue with that. Savage was always one of the greatest talkers in wrestling history, but his obsession with power and revenge consumed him. It all caught up with him at WrestleMania 7 when he lost a career-ending match against the Ultimate Warrior. And who was there to pick him up? Elizabeth.
Ugh, that moment makes me sick. After everything, she just comes waltzing back into his life like nothing happened. Sherry earned that spot by his side, and Elizabeth swoops in with the sad eyes, and suddenly, Savage is a changed man.
Yes, because deep down, even Savage knew he had lost his way. That moment wasn't just about Elizabeth. It was about redemption. He saw what he had become, and he chose to be better.
And in the process, he threw away the Macho King. A true ruler never steps down. But no, suddenly we're supposed to cheer for him because he cried and hugged Elizabeth. What happened to the macho madness?
It evolved, Jill. Savage finally realized that being king wasn't about power, it was about heart. And that's why, in the end, he will always be remembered as one of the greatest of all time.
Bah! He was already one of the greatest. But hey, I'll give him credit. Whether he was the Macho Man, the Macho King, or just Randy Savage, one thing never changed.
And what's that?
The fact that he was the cream of the crop.
Next, we continue our journey through the career of the incomparable Randy Savage, covering the years between his farewell to the Macho King and his shocking debut in WCW.
Shocking. Please. The man had to escape the land of Hulkamania politics. I'd call it an upgrade.
But instead, he chose a different path. He embraced Elizabeth, turned face, and soon after, they had a real-life wedding at SummerSlam 1991.
Don't remind me. The match made in heaven, they called it. I called it the match made in booking committees.
Will you stop? That wedding was a historic moment. But, as we saw, the honeymoon phase didn't last long, because at the reception, Jake the Snake Roberts and The Undertaker crashed the party.
And that's when things got interesting. Savage wasn't done. Jake Roberts pushed all the right buttons, forcing Savage to beg for reinstatement.
He had no choice. Roberts tormented him, even letting his snake bite Savage on television. If that wasn't personal enough, it was capped off by that infamous moment where Roberts slapped Elizabeth.
That was a villain move if I've ever seen one. You had to bring Savage back after that. And when he did, oh baby, business picked up.
Their feud was intense, culminating in Survivor Series 91 and a singles match at Tuesday in Texas. Savage got his revenge, but then another storm hit. Ric Flair.
Ooh, now this was money. Ric Flair strutted into the WWF and did what only Ric Flair can do, stir the pot. He claimed that he had been with Elizabeth before Savage, complete with doctored photos.
A classic mind game from the dirtiest player in the game, but Savage wasn't falling for it. At WrestleMania 8, he defeated Flair to reclaim the WWF Championship in one of the greatest matches of his career.
And then, the politics started. They took the title off him at SummerSlam 92, and suddenly Savage was getting pushed aside.
Not exactly. Savage transitioned to commentary, adding a veteran voice at the announce table. He still wrestled occasionally, but
He was being phased out, Simon. You can dress it up however you want, but the WWF was moving toward the new generation era, and Savage was being treated like yesterday's news.
look, by 1993, yes, the landscape was shifting. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and younger stars were stepping up, but Savage was still a major attraction.
Oh yeah? Then explain why they shafted him at the 93 Royal Rumble. The guy had Yokozuna down, eliminated him, but nope, Yoko just tossed him like yesterday's garbage.
That was a questionable moment, I'll give you that. But Savage still had a great showing at WrestleMania 9, defeating Crush in a Falls Count Anywhere match in '94. It wasn't until later that year that things really changed.
That's right, because he finally realised what I'd been saying all along. Vince McMahon didn't see him as a top guy anymore. The man who carried the company for years was suddenly just an announcer. And so, Savage did the smartest thing he could.
Signed with WCW.
Bingo. He saw the writing on the wall, took his ball, and ran where the competition respected him. When he showed up on WCW Saturday Night in December '94, the wrestling world shook.
No doubt about that. Seeing Savage in a WCW ring was surreal. The Macho Man was back in the main event scene, and Hulk Hogan, his longtime friend and rival, was there waiting.
Which brings up the million-dollar question. Was Savage making the right move teaming up with Hogan again? And then it all fell apart. The NWO took over, Hogan turned heel, and Savage got caught up in the madness. He won the WCW title a few times, but by '99, WCW was a mess. And when it collapsed in 2001, no more Macho Man.
Not exactly. Savage had one last run in 2004 with TNA Wrestling, but it was brief. He wasn't the same competitor by then, but his presence alone was legendary.
And then, tragedy struck.
Yes, in 2011, Savage passed away due to a heart attack while driving. It was a loss that shook the wrestling world. The industry lost one of its greatest performers, and fans lost an icon.
And it took WWE way too long to put him in the Hall of Fame. Savage was wrestling. The robes, the promos, the elbow drop, he had it all.
No argument there. Randy Savage's legacy is untouchable. A true legend, a true icon, and forever the Macho Man.
And if you guys want more epic wrestling debates like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
That's right. Join us next time as we dive into another wrestling legend. Until then, I've been Simon.
And I've been Jill saying, take care and see you on the next one.